Hi, Andrew. Good morning. You think you're on mute, so I can't hear you very well.
Now you're done.
Oh, yes. Now it's okay. Yes. Well, I guess Los Angeles is about the same as me here. It's 6:51, or 6:57, so it's bright and early.
Yes, but we're on global time, so time is irrelevant, Patrick. We're here when we need to be.
Oh, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard on the system, man. It's sometimes you work with North America here and the East Coast, they, oh yeah, 10 o'clock, no problem. And then it's 7 o'clock here in on the West Coast. And then in Asia, they say, well, why don't we meet a little while, Patrick? And so it will be sometimes it's in the late afternoon or evening. That's their morning time. So,
Yeah,
early morning here and then late afternoon and so on. So, but
yeah. My business is in the Philippines, so they're 13 hours ahead of us, 15 hours ahead of us. So it's
yeah,
challenging, but it's worthwhile.
yeah. So that's international. Yeah. So, I know that Jerica was thinking of talking to me a few minutes beforehand for today's meeting. If Jerica, if you are there.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
I was on mute.
Oh,
Hi,
okay.
good
Hi.
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Greetings.
Tell me, Jerica, what is your idea for today's meeting, the general direction?
So I want to just run over everybody a summary of implications of our manifesto, some of our points, just so that everybody knows what our club is focused on, what type of work that we do, and that we do it in a global sense. So that's what I'll be talking to you guys a bit about.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Well, I mean, we are, like Bill was saying, we're not going to be picking up wounded soldier, but get to the mission
Yes,
and secure the bridge.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, I work with a group of soft skill trainers, or they call themselves image consultants. And when I start using military terms, some of them object. They say, Patrick, we are not in a war. We are dealing with people. We work in a community. They're not customers. They are community. So those are the kind of things that I hear. But I said, those are just metaphors. But some people take offense. Well, they take issue to that. So just
Mhm. Exactly. I'm not sure if are we having other members join us this morning, or is this it for this Saturday morning?
I'm not too sure.
Okay, because we've got 6 participants. But I think we can go ahead and start everything.
Okay.
So Patrick, I'm just gonna lead us off with a couple things that Bill and I have summarized.
Oh, he's
Um,
here. He's here
oh,
now.
oh, great.
Hi, Jerica.
Hey,
Yeah,
good morning, Bill.
morning. Good morning. Glad to see some of you here. We're still waiting for a couple of people, so we'll give it a little bit more time. Kurt, I'm glad to see you with us again today. And Simone, Andrew, so and Patrick, of course. So if we can just hold on a little while, and we'll have a few more people joining us. So
Great.
with that, just continue with chit chat here, but let's not get into topics of the meeting yet, so that we can make sure that everybody is benefiting from that.
Great, thank you. Well, Kurt Kruger, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Andrew. My goodness,
Yes.
it's been a long time. I've been off in Africa for about 6 weeks and finally sort of settled in back in Los Angeles area.
I'm here as well. I was in Massachusetts for several months. I'm scheduled to go soon again, but perhaps we can connect together. I owe you another interview to follow up the one we did last year.
It'd be fun to do. It's any time to hang out with you. Well, I mean, everybody here on this platform right now is a wonderful change maker, and when we integrate our visions, that's where things really get to be able to be empowered more. And can't be any better than this. And there's so much great love in this room right now. So I appreciate
I'm so
it.
excited about this being focused on communications because in the world in which we live, it is up to us to create the narrative because, again, only 5 corporations own 95% of the world's media footprint. But we do have millions of us who have the power of becoming producers and not just consumers with the simple device that we're holding in our hands or that we're working through right now. So, Bill, I'm making available to you in and all of my platforms to help promote what you're doing and to share it wider. But you're going to have to help me because we need hashtag, we need backlinks, we need to let people know how to take action. And it's only then that way we can fully take advantage of this election cycle that's coming up that we're in the middle of now. And of course, we have the Olympics here in Los Angeles coming up. There's a lot of eyeballs out there, but Bill, we have to track them through what we're doing, I believe.
And we could do that. I get to learn to use hashtags because I'm not real adroit at that. So
Nor I, but I found it be, as a matter of fact, Patrick and I have been on this journey with Lloyd Helferty up in Canada for quite some time. And what started out as just an internal gag, so to speak, AHIABGA, which is a made-up sound, right? But it's an acronym for the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors. Long name, but if you hashtag that now, you'll find pages and pages of content that have just been populated because we're so readily use that hashtag around. So we've actually formally created a channel now for those that have an interest in it to use that so that we can all begin to pull together our eyeballs. So we'll talk more about that as the opportunity presents itself.
And put that into the chat too so that people can easily catch it when we have a chance. Because again, I wanted to point out one thing that I usually listen to the Daily Stoic or read the Daily Stoic. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it, but I've known the guy for a long time. And the thing that triggered me today, and I use that word sort of intentionally, is because of what's happening in the world. That he writes that history is a compendium of all the most incredible human mistakes ever made. It's a compendium of human stupidity. There's so much to learn from that, and to ignore that incredible wealth that's just sitting there for you, to me, is kind of tragic. I would approach it the other way.
This meeting is being
We
recorded.
have forgotten to be able to look at what has been really working for the masses and focused on this other stuff. Like you said, there's only a few corporations that run the world's media. So we are the media now because of these kind of platforms. And we can really reach out and bring forth what is the true foundation of life. And it's all basically love. And when we throw it out there, oh.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that you were speaking about the narrative earlier. It's a narrative that we need to deconstruct, right? And reconstruct a narrative based on love and humanity. And because love and humanity has been relegated in the 21st century, and it's been taken over by commodification, it's been politicized. And so for love and humanity to survive and to thrive, you have to deconstruct those negative narratives and produce a new narrative. So I've been working on this for like 5 years. And in September, I'm coming out with a book called Education and the Working Class. Is There Hope for an Inclusive System? But I'm speaking about the South African context, the British context, and the American context, but more specifically located within Africa. And so my next book, which is research that I want to undertake, is about changing the formative years of the lives of young children, changing an understanding of their lives and their lived reality by constructing a new narrative and giving teachers and administrators and planners new theoretical tools. And so while we're on this beautiful universe, we have to do this. We have to make this contribution.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And this is actually the 50th anniversary of the launch of a community think tank that I started here in Los Angeles. But one of the key focuses was on empowering our children to create autobiographies or journals of their own days, to be able to empower them to track their own history, but also for those of their family. At the time it was launched, this was during the time of VCRs, and the idea was for our community center to provide a place where kids could come in and sit down and just talk about a variety of things, beginning with who they are, identifying what their greatest talent is, their greatest skill is, what they would like to teach others about, what they would like to learn more about. With that basis, it provides a database, I hope, of characteristics that we can mix and match, so to speak, both with those that have an interest in learning more, but also those like us who are interested in giving more. But here we are, fast forward 50 years later, 40 years later. Actually, it's 50 because this started as a high school project in 1974. So I have kind of a long track record. But the idea is that I agree with you wholeheartedly. But for example, the people I'm dealing with in the Philippines, I work with the remnants of the Negritos. The Negritos were the original founders there, and as you may know, of inhabitants of the Philippines. Then when American imperialism came in the early 1900s, unfortunately, many of them were decimated, much like the American indigenous people here. Now there's just a small remnant in the San Andreas Mountains, which is where my business is located. It's an ecotourism business. Only a few steps away, we have Treasure Mountain, excuse me, the Treasure Mountain Educational Complex. Very popular resort. Thousands of tourists come by. We have 100 people that walk by our place every day. But just a few steps away, we have what they call the Katatubu tribe. So we have to provide free water, and we've now been able to provide water for the first time, running water to a tribe there, and electricity to another indigenous tribe, and Wi-Fi to another 1,200 people. But the connection is really a human basis, and it's out of love. And until and unless we begin there, it's difficult for me to see how we can connect all these things together. So I look forward to your book, and I hope you can also take advantage of the fact that this year is also the International Decade for People of African Descent, the last year in a 10-year cycle. So please take advantage of that when you're in your branding, so that you can show people that what you're doing has an impact, not just locally or in Africa, but worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So I see here we've had a few more people joining us, and I've started the recording. So let's start the meeting. And so ding, I'm Bill Graham. I'm the president of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global E-Club, and I declare this meeting on 3 February 2024 to be started. I need to start off with an apology that in the meeting we had 2 weeks ago, I sent out a Zoom link that was an incorrect link. And the reason for that was we had invited all of my contacts to attend a special meeting on artificial intelligence hosted by the Digital Pakistan SDG Academy. And so unfortunately, a lot of people went there, and I didn't figure out what was going on because I wasn't the host, and we weren't able to get the recording going started and all of these things. So I apologize for any of you who missed the meeting because of that reason. In the invite to today's meeting, at the very bottom, you'll see a link to the video recording of our last meeting. Now, having said that, we've had two meetings. In the first meeting, we discussed the basic mission and principles of our club. And this is very important because prior to COVID, our club, we had a whole slew of initiatives that we had spent a lot of time researching and identifying and figuring out, okay, how could we have influence to be able to impact all the major problems facing the world, not just one. Rotary is focused for 30 years on polio. Lions has had one focus for decades. And this is very typical of a lot of organizations to say, oh, let's address this problem. But when we look, we see there's a lot of problems facing the world. The Secretary General says that this is we've never before seen so many really serious problems facing the world all at once. And so in our club, we really realized that if we want to be of true service to our community, the world, we can't let any of those problems destroy us. So we've got to be addressing all of them. We got to look at all of them at the same time. And as impossible as that sounds, there is no alternative choice if we truly want to protect our community. And so what we need to do is we want to get back on track to those promising initiatives that we had prior to COVID that were very heavily oriented around education. And I'll explain why in a moment. But they were very heavily oriented around education. And of course, one of the first things COVID did was shut down schools all around the world. So our main strategies for mobilizing the masses around the world was not feasible for a couple of years. And as we were coming out of that, Russia invades Ukraine. And now all the attention of world leaders is focused on that. And one of the people on this call actually relayed to me an experience where she tried to have a discussion with the Secretary General about some initiatives for major problems in the world. And his response was, hey, I'm trying to prevent World War III. I don't have time to be paying attention to these other things at this time. And as the world has sort of adjusted to the situation in Ukraine, at least the disruptions to the global economy and so forth, what happens? We get the conflict between Palestine and Israel. And so now that's taking a lot of people's attention. The problem is, while all of this is happening, time is marching on. And the problems are not going away. They're getting worse. And so the need to address all these other problems in the world is there as great as ever. And if we are not doing something about it, we're not living up to our mission. And so we need to get back to the mission, which means we've got to be able to identify initiatives that we can undertake that are going to have a major impact on the problems facing the world. So this is what we discussed in that first meeting, because we have to get everybody back to understanding what are those principles, and more importantly, why? Why these principles? Why not something else? There's been at the UN so much talk recently about we need to do localize everything more and more. But when we analyze and when we listen to some people that speak out at the UN and other places, and they say, well, you just can't go out and say everybody go do something good. Rotary does that with Rotary clubs and expects every club to be able to go out there and come up with a great idea, rally their community, and be able to have a major impact on their community. But not every club has the skills and the resources to do that. So if we look at successful organizations, we see successful organizations just don't throw all the children into the swimming pool and say, go swim. Hopefully you'll learn before you drown. They plan to be able to nurture and support those initiatives taking place everywhere in the world to maximize their success. And so we try. Rotary is the largest association of business and civic leaders in the world. That should mean we're one of the largest organizations or largest groups of people with strategic skills and experience. So we've got to start learning to apply those strategic skills and experiences to addressing the problems and coming up with solutions that people can believe, have confidence in. Hey, these solutions can make the needed difference. And I say the needed difference because it's not doing what we can, not making incremental progress, because there are certain things like climate change or artificial intelligence that have tipping points. And if we do not get these problems under control before we hit these tipping points, it may be too late. We may no longer have the options and abilities to influence those factors. So we've got to take a very cold strategic look at the problems we're facing, and we've got to come up with solution ideas that people have faith in, that they can achieve the needed results. And then we've got to figure out a way to get everybody else in the world to join in to be able to make these achieve the needed results to protect the world from the consequences, the severe, potentially existential consequences that might happen if we don't do it. And they can call us crazy. In fact, our club almost prides itself on seeking to be the go-to place for the people who are crazy enough to think they can make a global difference, and at least daring enough to try. So that was the topic of the first meeting. Well, unfortunately, my computer froze up for about 5 minutes during that the early part of that meeting, and a lot of conversation took place when I was not on the call, which is, on the one hand, a good thing, and maybe the best answer that thing that could happen is that my microphone broke in a meeting, and so you guys can take over. But unfortunately, in that discussion, we had a lot of people saying, "Oh, grassroots is the way," and let's start small and grow, and many discussion points were talking about things that we were in the process of saying our studies show these don't work, and so therefore we do not want to follow those paths. Well, after the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, the people that were on the call thought, "Hey, this is a good meeting. Glad that I was there." But after the meeting, I had several people contacted me and say, this is a terrible way. It's obvious that there's a number of people on the call, on the meeting, that don't get it. They don't get the major points that you brought out in what we're now calling the club manifesto. Therefore, the meeting didn't really accomplish what it needed to accomplish. We need to get unity in purpose and unity in strategy, not through somebody dictating here, this is the way to go, but by discussing the various points. That's what I tried to do when I put it on the screen, the document, and said, let's go down through this point by point and say, why do we think this particular conclusion or point is the correct situation, with the hope that if anybody disagreed, we would discuss that point. And so we could get to the down to where we say, okay, the characteristics of what our club does that are based on this are A, B, C, and D. And so we could then all work together towards common goals. Well, anyway, so these comments that came in afterwards were a little disturbing. And then I agree with what they said, is that, hey, I'm not doing my job of keeping people on topic and on focus and making sure that we don't go off into side discussions that are not relevant to what we've defined as the key strategic points of our club. They said, hey, there's tens of thousands of Rotary clubs out there, and many of them follow a different path. So if they don't buy into what we're talking about, then it's better they go there so we can have a unity of focus within our club. Anyway, in the second meeting, the idea was to say, look, we're not going to solve the world problems if we've got some fraction of 1% of the people concerned and talking about it and trying to come up with the answers, or even 10% of the people, and 90% of the people saying, I don't believe that's a problem, or no, there's nothing we can do about it anyway, and going about their business, or pursuing goals that are not contributing to the things that we believe are needed to preclude those consequences that we don't want to see. So we need to find a way to mobilize the masses, to unite the masses of the world behind initiatives that are going to have true impact on the major problems that are facing the world in time to avoid those negative consequences that we don't want. So we said there's two things for people to act. There's two things that have to happen. One, they have to see and believe in a compelling vision, compelling goal, or some compelling reason why they should do anything. So we've got to convince people, or we've got to be able to present a compelling reason for people to act. The second thing they need to see is they need to see a path of action that they believe could achieve the results. If they don't see a path that they believe can achieve the results, they don't know what direction to step off in. They don't know how to begin, and so they don't do anything. They also have to see where they fit in that path, where they can play a meaningful role. And so we need to deliver those two things. We need to deliver the compelling reason for acting, the compelling vision of where we're trying to go that people will agree with. And we need to be able to present a credible path of how we can get there that people believe is possible and has space for them. So we try to present, but in the second meeting, we started off with the review of the first meeting based on those comments that I had received, and that ended up eating up a great amount of the time. So we basically spent most of the second meeting regurgitating a lot of what we discussed in the first meeting. And only towards the end did we get into that point that we need to be able to mobilize the world's masses. We need to be able to unify them behind some common objectives and strategies, and that we, as a small group, we're not going to be able to do that by rolling up our sleeves and saying, okay, we're going to go fix personally all the problems in the world. We have to find a way to influence others. And that influencing others includes influencing the masses, but it also includes influencing the people of influence in the world, the people of power in the world, the people that have the means to cause the actions that we believe in to take place. So because we needed to show people that it is possible, because otherwise we're just out there ranting that, hey, we got to go save the world, we got to go do these incredible massive things. We presented an example of a project that we believe could mobilize the masses and begin the process of getting people engaged in doing something to make a difference. And when I say engaging the masses a significant percent, I'm not talking about millions or tens of millions of people. We need hundreds of millions as a minimum, because even if we got 800 million people doing something, it's only 10% of the world population. And 10% of the world population is still iffy. It's definitely not enough to achieve the ultimate goals. It might be enough to get started, to get the momentum going, though. But 1 million and 10 million, unlikely. Okay, So the other thing here, so at the end of the meeting, we discussed that communications is the key. Communications is a real key for us to be able to influence people around the world. We need two things. We need to be able to communicate in a way that will influence others. We also need to have ideas that will influence others. We can't do one without. So that means our club is of a think tank to try to come up with the ideas, a facilitator. We're not the brain that's going to have all the answers for everything, but we can facilitate the identifying of solutions that will have people saying, hey, yes, this can achieve those needed goals. And we said, along with that, the need that we set the goals based on what's needed and not what we think we can do. Almost all organizations out there start off with, hey, what can we do about this, or what can we do about that? Well, imagine you're in a ship and you say, well, the ship is sinking here. I think we can bail at the rate of 5,000 gallons an hour if everybody chips in. But the ship is sinking at the rate of 10,000 gallons an hour. So it's not good enough to settle to just do something for the sake of doing something if it's not going to achieve the results that you need. So we said we've got to make sure we set those needs. So we need to have the ideas, but we need to get them implemented. There are a gazillion great ideas out in the world. Where the world fails is getting these implemented everywhere in the world, so that we can achieve those needed goals. So that is where the communications factor comes in, and the need to be able to communicate to the people who control the ability to do things, as well as the people that we expect to do them on the masses, if you would, of the populations. So we talked about the need to establish a communications, a global communications committee to guide the club's effort to communicating with all parties, communicating with us internally in the club, so everybody in the club knows what are we doing, where we're at. We have not done a good job at that. And one of the problems, I've had many members of the club saying, well, what are we doing? I'm not seeing anything being done, because they're not aware that there's a group over here working on this and there's a group over there working on that. So we need to do a better job of communicating to everybody of what's being done by whom and how they can get involved and so forth. And that can be done through a newsletter, through a website, and so forth. We need also to communicate to people that we would like to have join us, become co-conspirators. And many of you have heard me use that word. And that's really what I want this club to be. I want this club to be a club of co-conspirators. We need to get the job done out there in the world. And, sometimes that's not going to be just go out and say, do it. We've got to figure out how we are going to get the people to be aware, to understand, or just simply to do, because for whatever other reason they're doing it. And so co-conspirator is a word that I find best describes what I hope the members of this club see. They say, there's the mission, and now we're going to become co-conspirators for how are we going to get there? How are we going to do that? So we want to invite others to join us to be co-conspirators. So the communications committee has to come up and figure out, okay, how do we inform everybody else out there what we're doing and why, so that people who agree with what we're trying to accomplish or agree with our conclusions of why the bulk of the efforts of the world have been failing to achieve what we need to be achieved, that they might join us. Third, we need to be able to communicate to potential allies that can help us achieve the goals, because maybe they have a particular goal they're following that aligns with something we need that we see we need in the goals we're doing, and therefore we can help them achieve what they're trying to do. And they can help us achieve by what we're trying to do by us working together. Again, communications to people with special skills, special connections, or special goals. Then we have to talk about the people of influence that we're trying to influence. And we need to, the communications committee has to figure out, okay, how do we get these people of influence to do what we need them to do? We can have a leader of a country who is totally corrupt and they have stolen almost everything in that country. And we can say, oh, okay, it would be nice if they were replaced. The problem is we see in so many places when leaders are replaced, the new leaders aren't any better than the leaders that they replaced. It's just that they wanted to be the ones able to go and reap the benefits instead of having the other guy reap the benefits. We have to figure out, how do we get these people to do the right thing? How do we get these people to support what's needed? So we've got to find out what the little levers are that are going to cause these leaders to do the right thing. Figuring out how we can get them to become heroes in the history books. So that, or what are the things that motivate them that go beyond, let's say, the material pieces. And finally, the masses. How do we reach the masses? And the masses are thinking in 1,000 different directions. How do we go and communicate with them and get them to listen? Because there's so much noise out there in the world today, and there's so many fragmented communication channels. It's not an easy task. So we've got this whole series of things of communication that are crucial, and we need to get together an organization to really focus on this and saying, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to influence those parties around the world that need to be influenced? Well, anyway, at the last meeting here, we had several people step up and say, hey, I'm ready to help on that. I want to do something about this. So we had Jerica, we had Gail, we had Patrick, and some others saying, yes, I'm on board. Let's get this going. So the key thing here that this committee is really crucial. So what I want to do here is, to give my voice a little bit of a rest. What I'd like to do is to invite Jerica, Gail, and Patrick to comment on some of the thoughts on communication and of what we need to do and how we can get organized. But unfortunately, I was planning to have a nice agenda type of a PowerPoint here, so we could talk about topic A and then topic B and then topic C. But unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to finish that. So I will sort of mention a topic and then invite the three of them plus anyone else on the call to comment, please, on this. The first thing that I'd like to say is this idea of these different audiences, if you would, that I mentioned, communicating with them, and then to talk about what kind of allies, who can we get to help us be better communicators. I worked in market and media research for a while, many years ago, and I know we brought in psychologists. We work together with PR agencies and advertising agencies, marketing consultancies, and so forth. But there's many others, maybe professors of communication in universities or who knows what. So I'd like to maybe begin with that. First of all, I'd just like to ask, because it's a little different than what we had talked about how we run today's meeting. Jerica, Gail, Patrick, are you guys okay with that approach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Before I begin, Lloyd has his hand up. So Lloyd.
So hey, I came on late. Sorry.
but I'm catching up now. And hey, Patrick, everybody, nice to see Andrew's here as well. But in terms of communications, this is actually part of what UnityNet is doing as well, is engaging especially with what we call the creatives, the creative sectors, the artists, the music, the dance, the arts and culture sector really is, if you look at the media, it is the influence. So that is the sector I think we should be focusing on, is getting those creative media people in the sort of what we've been focusing on is the grassroots people, in trying to engage them. That's where we actually have our strongest allies.
Yeah. Great. Lloyd, we'll come to that in more detail, but I think it's great here if you can bring into the mix your connections and experiences on that. And we have very specific initiatives that we've identified that deal with the arts in a big way, not a little way, a big way, mobilizing literally millions of people, whether it's in the area of music and or in the area of arts. Gail, maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
So I know many of us, as Bill said, I want to stay in alignment with what Bill has been talking about, because I have to agree with Bill that the club is an amazing club with amazing people, but we have been kind of all over the place, you know, in what we've been doing. And so I want to just, Bill, if I go out of the framework, would you please stop me and let me know? Okay. All right. So with regard to the arts, Lloyd, my background has been in the arts, and I'm not tooting my background. So please, no one hear it that way or anything. Just hear it from a regular girl from the Bronx who has engaged. Okay. My background in working with the arts has been with everyone from the rappers you see today to the classical side, okay, to the dance side, to working in television and movies. I've just been blessed that way. It's an area that I love. I will be working, and also in media, you know, like with the journalists and on TV journalists, online journalists, and offset. This is a major communication reach, as well as educators. That and climate, okay? So in that regard, we are, what Bill is saying is that there's a place for that. Not saying that they can't do it in other places, but there is a place for that with the upcoming initiatives that the club has in place. And it will take center stage as the influencers, Lloyd, to ensure that what the club is doing is they become the influencers to really get that out there in a way that is palpable, sometimes maybe within a week or two or something like that. What we want to do as a communications team, okay, is amongst the three of us, is ensure that there are setups where we have the media who act as, I guess you say, catalysts to take this message and run with it, whether it's the media, whether it's television. Then we have the psychiatrist behind it, the advertising and media area. Then we have the music, film, and that area. Like everyone, this club will become the facilitators of it and engage and give them the parameters in which to move all of this forward. But at the same time, we understand as the nucleus of as the driving force behind it of what we are trying to push out there. I don't know if that makes any sense. So it's great. I know I hear a lot every week, and all of us here, we need to get the artists in or whatever. As a matter of fact, at the UN this week, with the Secretary General, the Deputy Secretary General, and others, I pushed out for artists to be included with a seat at the table with member states. Okay, it's something that our group had already done. There's a lot of people out there playing in that field. There are people who are competing for each other, against each other in that field. But the most important thing that came out of this week is, yes, it's important. and also that artists are paid, okay? And it's a human right for the artistic sides of things across all art disciplines. So that's something that our group created probably since 98, and we followed up this week with. But at the same time, and I'm a huge proponent and advocate, facilitator, and all that, and I don't stand here by myself alone. At the same time, it's most important that what Bill is saying, and I'm not saying that because Bill is here. I'm really would ask people to really listen to Bill from a different place this week. Okay? Don't listen to Bill as sometimes I know, and Bill, forgive me for saying this because I know you've said this yourself, as a monologue. No, see it as a dialogue and see what he's writing as an opportunity to step in as an invitation. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah, this is really extremely important. These meetings, when we have topics, they're intended to be topics of discussion. Okay, so it's really important to us that there's no wrong comments, there's no wrong conclusions, other than if you're saying, hey, we want to do something else. We want to focus on helping people, and I say that deliberately because when we say here we want to focus on the causes of problems rather than the consequences. One of the reasons why these tens of millions of projects over the last decades have not achieved results is most of them are reactive, dealing with the consequences of the problems. It's mostly dealing with helping the victims of the consequences of the various problems we have. And as a result, the resources, it's much easier to know what to do to deal with the consequences of a problem and the victims than it is to figure out how to prevent the problems, the consequences from happening in the first place. But what we are saying is, look, if we do not focus on the causes, then next year we're going to have the same consequences over again, and the year after that we're going to have the same consequences. So we need to take those resources that are all being devoted right now to the consequences, and we really have to say, if we are trying to be of strategic service to our community, we have got to prevent future consequences. That has to be the primary goal. But I'd like thank you, Gail, for bringing out the points in this, Sigamoni, and then I would like to hear from Jerica and Patrick on what Gail was saying about the idea of the alliances and the goals of our communications committee. Sigamoni.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bill. So I hear Gail and the lady from the Bronx, and you know, I worked when South Africa became a democracy. I worked for the Mandela administration, and I got involved in education, and I managed the education white paper 6 in South Africa. And then I spent, because I came from what Gail calls the Bronx, I came from our own Bronx in Durban, South Africa. And I was in the system for many years. And as I worked in the system, I realized the system was marginalizing poor children. And because of my background, I studied, and then I got a scholarship to study in the United States. I studied there. I came back to South Africa. I finished my doctorate, and then I got an extraordinary professorship from the university. But this is because I was generating a narrative about underprivileged children. And so many of you are familiar with South African wine. So I used to go to the wine areas, and I used to see what was happening to those children of the workers on the wine farm, that they were living lives that their great ancestors had lived 200 years ago. There is no social mobility. And so then I witnessed what was happening in the townships of the Western Cape, and what they were doing, and how the system was responding to these children. So in December last year, I decided this is enough. I gave them a notice that I'm leaving. Well, my book will be coming out, as I mentioned a few times. And I want to generate a narrative, as Bill was saying, that it's a call to action, and Gail was saying the same thing, is that we need to change the narrative, not only in South Africa, because South Africa borrows narratives from the West. And a lot of African countries do that. So I have studied the countries' interventions in education. And I think in the United States, if you look at various places in the United States, you will find context like we find in South Africa. If you look in the United Kingdom, it's the same thing. But the world education narrative is being dominated by, it's been commodified, it's been politicized, as I mentioned before, and we need to change the education narrative. And very simply, I'm going to conclude now. Very simply, in the foundation phase of education, there are vastly distinct areas, and the education system cannot generate a pedagogy for children who are underprivileged. And that's the problem. That's a reading problem in the United States. That's the behavioral problem in the UK. And that problem exists in Africa. And so that's my next project. Yeah. So I'll share more details with you as I go on. Thank you, Bill.
Yes, thank you. What I'd like to do is hold off, please, on the comments on specific things like that for education, because this is 100% right, and we've identified here not just us. I mean, the whole UN, the Secretary General, the whole Transforming Education Summit was about the fact that the current education systems around the world are not fit for purpose. They are not fit for the needs of the 21st century. But as we get into that, we have to be a little careful because of the impact, the impending changes as a result of artificial intelligence, for example. The education systems are probably going to change dramatically in the next couple of years. But in the meantime here, we see education, maybe we see right now, number one, we said if we're going to have the impact we want to have on the world, which we need to do in a relatively short time, we have to be able to communicate with the masses. Because of all the fragmented communication vehicles paths out there right now, we see getting to students in schools as being one of the best ways to communicate with the masses. If we can engage them in doing something that benefits their education, which almost every parent wants, which every community wants, we can mobilize huge number of people, because that's a known world problem. 2 out of 3 10-year-olds in the world supposedly cannot read effectively. So this is something where we got everybody in agreement that, hey, this is something we should do. Go out there with climate change. You've got 50% of people saying there's no problem. You got a whole bunch of people saying the solution directions we're going are wrong. And so to try to get unity behind that is tough, and almost any other problem we want to address out there. So I think here I'll come back, but we're looking almost to use creating a success in education as a way to create a gateway to getting people to focus more on all the problems, because following the global readathon we've been talking about the idea of running a world competition, getting upper primary schools and middle school competing to see which school can come up with the best skit, a 3 to 5 minute presentation about the future they want, about what the SDGs are and how their community stands with regards to those SDGs, and how they could go about getting to that future of having those SDGs resolved, and then running a competition level all the way up. Okay. So at any rate, we'll talk about that, because when we talk about communications, it's good to have an example that we can say, here is a project that we're looking at, and here's how the communication plays a role in being able to make that project a reality. So FC. You wanted to make a comment, but please, if we could keep the future comments short, I need to get to Jerica and Patrick, and we need to move on to the concrete examples. Yes, please.
No, hello everybody. I'll keep it very brief. Thank you so much, Bill. My name is Francisco, and I work with Gail Davis. And I just wanted to share a quick thought. Someone shared about, taking narratives from, other people, or like South Africa taking narrative from other countries. And I want to share one thing. If a country's going to develop, they need to find out what's their own inner strength. Because at least what I found is when a country doesn't realize their own inner strength, or rather just tries to see what another country is doing, then yeah, you're not going to progress forward. Unless you are able to actually, it's different when you're learning from another country, but when you're just trying to completely mimic what they're doing, it doesn't work. And that's actually what I learned from Gail too, and actually my own personal life, not just country level. I think we as individuals do that too. So that's one thing, just one quick thing I wanted to share. Another thing is with that, I also learned from working here, is a lot when people are working together, especially country level, a lot of people have hidden agendas. And when you have a hidden agenda, people really don't truly know what they want. And when people actually just are honest and reveal it, everyone's working together freely and it's all out, nothing to hide. And I think that's what's going to move everything forward. So I just wanted to share those quick thoughts. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you. One thing we need to be very cautious about here is, just as when we look here, regions within a country, and we can say, oh, there's different regions. The major goals that are facing the world are facing all of us. And these, the national preferences and national interests and things like this, really we need to get the focus on the points of unity in these major world problems, because having traveled in every continent in the world except in Antarctica, and actually lived in 3 continents for extended periods, I can say that the similarities between all of us are much greater than the differences. And when we really get down to talking about, the future we want, this is why that UN motto, or saying future we want, is so important, because if we start wanting different futures, we're going to have some problems. We've got to find out, so when we talk to people and people say, well, do you want running water? And some people have it, some people don't yet have it. But there's very few people that say, no, I don't want clean water. And as we look across the SDGs, there's a reason why all the countries of the world agreed to a set of goals and a set of 169 targets behind them, because these are the things that are of common interest to the world. So when we start to look, we have to be very careful to try to bring people together and look at the big picture. We have to see the world, and Andrew's got a piece of the, I think that's the world here on his background there. We have to see the world as that. We're this little tiny blue thing hanging in space out there. And we're not going and seeing, oh, I'm standing here and I can see 4 miles in any direction off this local hill. And that's the only world I care about. We have to care about this blue thing out there hanging in space, because if that sinks, all those little 4-mile segments in the world go down with it. So I think, Dennis, please.
Thank you, Bill. It is really nourishing listening to this high quality of discussion. And I began to think about how learning, how the acquisition of knowledge has changed. How much do we learn from those whom we're trying to help? And we must move now from the acquisition of knowledge to the effective use of this knowledge. And one right answer is not the answer anymore. Agreeing on how we can find consensus and the most appropriate approach is what is keeping us back. So consensus building for action is what's keeping us back. So when we look at the scope and sequence of learning, we have to revisit that and recognize that skills and concepts at the highest and most complex levels, as AI is beginning to teach us, is what we have to begin to apply. So we have to move from measuring aptitude and looking at how we assess impact of what we're doing. How do we assess the impact of what we're doing? Because there is no one textbook answer. There is no longer a primary source for answers, but we have to use multiple resources. And therefore, exciting activities is not only for those who can, it's not only for leaders, it's not only for those who are coming forward. It has to meet all levels of abilities, because remember, everybody has abilities, not only those who are agile and are going around presenting themselves as solutions. So assessment as an event that's in the past. There is this assessment has to be at dipstick type intervals as we go along. So learning in separate disciplines, that we have to learn across disciplines. And so it is very, very refreshing to listen to how we in this group, I say we because I've been listening. So my intervention talks about different standards for different students. That's not what it is anymore. We need high standards for all communities and all engaging parties. We can't just go and try to measure it to fit where you went. You have to bring what is called normed reference. So I just wanted to make these comments, but I really am pleased with the scope of the discussion. I thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Now I'd like to hear from Jerica. Jerica, I am sure we've had talks here over the last. Well, Jerica has been with us since 2017, 2018. Long time. And so we've gone through all the projects we were working on back then. Jerica was a co-organizer of the first pilot Dare to Be Great Challenge competition, where we challenged schools to come up with the most outrageously audacious solution ideas to major world problems, and which resulted in the winning team being invited by the World Summit of Nobel Peace Prize winners to attend their World Summit in Mexico and host a workshop. So Jerica, do you want to just sort of comment on this, the thought here on the strategy of our communications committee and the some of the parties we believe will be able to help us? And then what I'm going to do is don't necessarily go in yet to the communication sequence. I want to set the stage for that, and I'll come back. And then Patrick, if you could start collecting your thoughts, because after we hear from Jerica, I'd like to hear from you. Thank you. So please, Jerica.
Okay, great. First, I would like to start out with kind of just a light summary of implications of our manifesto points, just so everyone can get on the same mind frame. I think our group over the years, we've had to focus and then refocus. We've got a lot of members who believe very strongly in grassroots activity, and that is, it's not what we do. So I would like to open the floor for comments after small, short comments if we can, just so we can keep time. But I'd like to go over these points, and I would love for before we get into the details of communications committee, that we all have the same mind frame. So our club, we actively seek out ways to effectively address major problems facing our world in time, of course, to avoid severe and potential existential consequences of problems. We will not engage in or otherwise support initiatives that do not aim to meaningfully improve the overall global situation with regard to the causes of major world problems, as indicated in the World Bank or equivalent reports. In other words, we will not support initiatives that deal primarily with the symptoms or the consequences of problems, primarily dealing with victims of problems. The exception is where the consequences of one problem is a major cause limiting the success of dealing with important major problems. We will not engage in initiatives that are primarily local or regional unless they're likely to significantly impact the overall global situation regarding one or more of our world's major problems, and are likely to leverage central coordination and support to ensure effective benefits of the principle of economies of scale. An exception would be proof of concept initiatives that include measures to implement the initiatives worldwide once the concept has been proven to be effective. We will not engage or support initiatives that depend on the spontaneous, voluntary goodwill of others to achieve needed, meaningful results. So I'd like to open the floor for just a second for comments on what we do and don't do, just so I can have a bit of an understanding who's on board and, maybe where we need to tweak a few mindsets.
Hi, Jerica. This is Gail. How are you?
It's good to see you, Gail.
It's good to see you as well. So I just wanted to have an understanding, one that I had with Bill today and subsequently prior to that with Patrick and myself and you. My understanding is that with the communications team, we're going to have an outreach, which we're not going to go into because Bill has asked us not to. But we will actually have, clusters. Would that be the right word, Bill? Clusters of people like media, and I call them clusters. It might be groups. It might be facilitated like that. Okay. It would be clusters of groups that we would help to facilitate. Also, the understanding that it would be myself, you, and Patrick will be running the communications team. I won't say running, but we'll be the administering, helping to administer this overall program, that we will be that cluster that does that. And what that would look like and having what it would look like for each party to be involved with us, and what the schematics of that would look like, I think would be good for everyone to know that, what the media outreach, I don't know if Bill wants that out yet, but what the media outreach would look like, what the arts reach would look like, what this, the psychologist outreach would look like, anything that might be. And this is nothing's definite, but what it might look like, and how people can join in with the three of us running the committee, or whatever you call it, group, whatever it is, what it would look like for them to work with you, myself, and Patrick as leading this, what it would look like. I think that would be good for people to understand. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, Gail. I agree. We've had a lot of good input. Honorable Andrew Williams, you've got a lot of great ideas as far as who we will talk to, how we will express ourselves, and what we need to do back in technically on our end to hold that and grow. So I just would like to hear the group speak out on what we do and don't do as far as our global mindset. maybe some global messaging that we can have from our group.
Yeah, and I think here it's very important, as Jerica was just pointing out. Right now, she's sort of trying to make sure that those points that we brought out in our manifesto of focusing on the global perspective, because climate change is not local. AI, artificial intelligence impact is not going to be local. We saw just in the wars, you can have a war that's just taking place in one place. It disrupts economies all around the world and has long-reaching, complex implications that impact hunger, impact many different things. So I think here the key thing that Jerica is looking for right now is any comments that anybody might have relative to what as a club, not just communication, but as a club, what we do and don't do related to that manifesto of mission and principles. So I'll let you continue, Jerica.
Yes. Does anyone have any comments? I see some
hands up.
Sigmoni, was your hand raised from your last?
Yeah. So
okay. We've got
so I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also important to demystify narratives that are not in the best interest of society. And so to be vigilant about issues around climate change, issues around education, or other issues that you want to highlight, but to demystify it so that, you must have noticed that, when major events happen in the world, it's constructed in a particular way, and it serves certain people's interests, but not the interests of the majority of the people. So if we want to advance human agency in the world, and we want people to have a mindset that calls into question their own oppression or their own exploitation without realizing it. It's this old hegemonic narrative that dominates the world from time to time. I don't want to list any political events because I think, I don't want to introduce emotion into this thing. But if you look at the major news outlets, how they convey messages and how they interpret reality, you can always call that into question. So I don't think in terms of liberating the minds of people, we have to demystify some of those messages. And how we reconstruct it and put it out there must have the objective of acting in the best interest of people.
Yes, before Andrew speaks, because Andrew's been waiting for some time, I just want to say one of the things I think that's very important right now is to get out the messages that we feel are important, that are going to get people to take actions to better the world. And in that regard, some of the times we're going to have to bite our tongues. I mentioned the issue, we might have some leaders of some countries that have that act in the best interest of themselves. They sort of raided their national treasuries or whatever. But we see when we go out there and we can advocate for their replacement. But if we look historically, we see bad leaders have been replaced, and the leaders that come in after them are not necessarily better, or even if they're well-intentioned, we see that a great many leaders who are trying to do the right thing have been unable to do so because it's too hard to change the status quo. There's a certain momentum taking place and to get that change. So one of the things that I've found here, and I worked with a lot of governors of states and some country leaders, and I've seen many times when you ask them, please, would you go out and do this for us? The answer is, sorry, I'm too busy, or no, I don't agree with that, or whatever. But we found here what was very effective is to just go out and cause something good to happen, and then to invite those people to come and join and take a bow. And I saw in one case, I had 10 governors, all of which rejected participating and getting the engine going. All 10 participated in the press conferences that we had, to take the credit for the achievements that we achieved. And once they do that, they're on record as being in favor of that. And now when you go and do an add-on to that thing that they're in favor, it's very hard for them to now say no, because they could lead to another opportunity to take another. So we've got to find the ways to get, and this is why we say being the influencers. We may feel that it serves our sense of justice if we can punish the people that we think have done the bad things. But right now, it's more important that we get everybody doing the good things than we worry about punishing people for doing the bad things. And so this is where we get into the strategic thinking and strategic planning. How we know what the goal is, where we want to get to, and how do we best make that happen. Okay, just wanted to say that. Andrew, please.
Yeah. So Andrew?
Yes, if I may share my screen briefly. In the chat,
Yeah.
I did put a link there. And Bill, I couldn't agree with you more. I've had the very same experience. As I mentioned to you, or I didn't, in 2000, I was brought into a global business incubation, a think tank. It was launched on the campus of Loyola Marymount University in 1991 by Dr. George Kotsmetsky, who's known as the father of Silicon Valley, et cetera. But this particular organization was headed up by Paul and Tanya McDonald, who are of African-American descent. And their focus was on taking the blueprints that were used on a global scale, and even from business intelligence and military intelligence level, to apply that to the grassroots community. But one thing we did bring forth is that it's always, my particular role was as a zero-time solutions facilitator. Zero time being a philosophy launched by Dr. Raymond Yeh in 1998. And it's easily, you can find it easily online about what it means. But primarily, I was designated as what's called the zero-time solutions facilitator in 2000. Since then, I've evolved, and now it'd be more accurate to call me a zero-time solutions accelerator. But I would like to ask you, Bill, and also the team, to consider what we're really trying to accomplish. And taking the example that Bill used, if I may share my screen, and bring you back to
you should be able to share your screen now.
Bring you back to a realization that the Sustainable Development Goals that we're dealing with now are the second iteration of the Millennium Development Goals in 2000. However, it's Kofi Annan's lived experience that helped to shape what we're now dealing with. But it's also important, I think, to realize I myself personally do not condone, agree with, or even like all of the, or even most of the decisions made by the United Nations. But I recognize them as a global as the global representative of all the countries on Earth, primarily. The bone I have to pick is that in 1948, there was no consideration of the indigenous population or the indigenous peoples that were not recognized as nations, but who now are in fact our Earth defenders, etc. But at any rate, what I would like to suggest to you is this, that we take a look at what the United Nations has already designated as global goals, and then we decide if we are in a position to, or decide to, identify those that we want to address, and then accomplish those, and let them take the credit for us accomplishing goals that they themselves have already set up. I'm not suggesting that we deal with all of these or any of these. I'm just suggesting that we take knowledge and recognition of the fact that there is already a global agenda that's set up addressing one or more of the areas that we ourselves have an interest in. So that being the case, if we're looking at this being the decade to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals, how much more impactful can we be if we take each of those global goals and then engage our young people with being the ones to create the narrative about how they want to accomplish that? The last thing I'll say is that the Millennium Development Goals were developed by a handful of people in the basement of the United Nations, but The Sustainable Development Goals came about through a global survey of millions of people to determine the world we want. So it seems, Bill, that we're right on that track again now to get our kids to use their tools and resources to demonstrate the narrative of the world we have, how we can achieve the world we have from the world we have now. Thank you very much.
Yes, and
Thank
exactly.
you, Andrew.
Yeah, Jerica, maybe you just want to mention the Future We Want series. You know, we have those 3 or 4 initiatives that are all about that have that Future We Want as their theme.
Yes, the Future We Want project, it is based on young people coming up with a concept of what kind of world they'd like to see. And really, my thoughts on the leaders of the world saying to young people, oh, the future's in your hands, and yet they have wonderful ideas, but they don't have exactly a strategy of achievement. They're a bit limited in their activity. A lot of that comes into play when we see things like Fridays for the Future, a different kind of things where we have young people out in protest, or we have them on their soapbox. So the really interesting thing about our group and what we're doing with the Future We Want is we actually have a strategy focus on how they can achieve those very audacious ideas and goals that they have set that are relevant to the SDGs and their achievement.
So in that regard, all I'm suggesting, however, again, if we make a commitment to first identify the existing global goals that have been set by the United Nations, and then adapt our efforts to do what we can to bridge the gap. As you may know, the Africa we want is also the catchphrase for the African Union's Agenda 2063. So again, it certainly comes back to the youth, but I think perhaps we need to consider ourselves as the facilitators of championing the narratives of the youth, but based on the existing global structure that's in place, not create youth, but to accelerate it. Thank you.
Andrew, we have, you may not be aware, underlying almost all of our projects is something called Vision World 2030. This is the world that could be if all the SDGs were fully achieved in all parts of the world for all people. So when we go out there and say we want to help protect the world from the consequences of the major problems facing the world, we look to the SDGs and the 169 targets behind them. Now, they're not all equal. Some of them are more urgent than others, let's say, because of science and physical situations. But the SDGs are the core. Need some modifications because AI was not on the scene the way it is now at the time that the SDGs were established. But you're 100% right. We are looking here, the projects that we've identified, we see them moving to address all the SDGs in a sequence. And when we get into the initial examples of the projects that we're really looking to push forward most this year, I think that will come through. So Francesco.
Yeah,
Actually,
I just want to.
let me turn this back to Jerica because this is Jerica's segment. Jerica.
Yes, go ahead, Francisco. And then we'll
Yeah,
go to His Excellency Antoine, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so first, I want to go back to Jerica, your point first, because I'm actually, a younger person myself. And I think in some ways you are correct regarding with the young people in Fridays for Future. I actually worked indirectly with them. And, not having set goals, but I think where with what you said might be missing is number one, is it's not just about, I guess, bringing the youth narrative. I think it's also having the youth work with all ages. And because I feel like everyone has a perspective. And in my personal opinion, I think what a big lack from us here's a strength from the youth. The youth is we're very, I think, innovative. We bring in new ideas, but a lot of people don't see. But here's the thing: sometimes we don't see the other people's viewpoint. I realize there's a lot of my generation when I was on campus. I feel like people just fail to see the other person's perspective and they think their perspective is only right. And that's why you see so much division now. I think part of the reason our country, and at least in America, I can't speak for other countries, but in America, that's why you see so much division. And it's really when people are able to see other people's perspectives, that's when people come together. And so I think it's not just about, we're talking about bringing the youth narrative, but it's not just about bringing the youth narrative. I think their narrative is getting pushed forward in many ways. It's about actually having the youth understand, people, all the other ages and culture, and same with the older people understand youth, everyone understanding each other. So we're actually working together. So I think that's what we really need.
Yes, agreed, agreed. Thank you very much. His Excellency Antoine, you've got your hand up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
The
Francis.
last point made by Francisco was just almost on my point. Dip your bucket where you are. We must think, at least globally, but the actions that we take locally makes us brighten the corner where we are. And if each of us, if each community lights up, then we have lit up the world. So where in the world do we like what is happening now that we can promote? Can we all testify to that? Where in the world do we like what's happening that we can hold up as models? In addition, I like the fact that the leaders of the world ought to engage young people in what I call an intergenerational relay, because the values and all the knowledge, we have to pass it on. So the intergenerational relay is not diminishing the significance of what we call the future, the young people. So we need an intergenerational engagement, not just youth here and old people there. And we need to work collaboratively so we can pass the baton. That's my intervention at this time.
I totally agree, everyone. This is a kind of why Bill wanted, other members to, especially our new communications team, to kind of come out and get everyone talking, because what we noticed, Bill dropped off the call and then we had everyone finally speaking up and talking a bit. Unfortunately, it was a bit unfocused. And I think here, what we've done today and from the comments that I've heard, I'm really pleased because I feel as though everyone is really targeted in their mind frame about what we do from the points of our manifesto. I'm very pleased with what we've heard today. I'm going to have Patrick come up next. He's got some brilliant ideas.
Sigmoni's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sigmoni. I thought that was your hand from last time. Forgive me.
No, that's fine. So I agree with you. This is a very good discussion, and I'm very impressed by it. And I'm very bad with names, but the person who spoke about the youth and the division in the universities and the diverse opinions, I think it's so important to create a narrative, generate a narrative, and advance it aggressively about all these myths about the world, and to talk about love and to talk about humanity. And we need more people in the world to bring people together. And all these divisions that are created are very superficial and are often based on superficial things, And once we have more unity, But unity can only be created if we create a narrative. I mean, the world is an old place. It's for many billions years old. There's 8 billion people in the world. But the impact that we make, we need to really think about it. And how do you advance a humanitarian narrative in the world? But that is why I said earlier, that you've got to read the divisions. You've got to read what's creating those divisions, right? Because I think generally human beings are well intentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sigmoni. So, Bill?
Okay, I have my hand up now. I'm
Yeah.
trying to make it so we can follow the protocol here. I just want to comment on a said first by His Excellency regarding if we can get a community to light, if the idea is getting the local communities to light up. One of the challenges we've got really is it's easy to get a community to light up. It's easy to get a couple of communities to follow a community that has lit up. Our problem is, how do we get them all to light up? And the problem is that so many communities out there don't have the means. They don't have maybe the expertise. They don't have even the knowledge that certain opportunities exist or certain options exist. So that it's very important that we realize that every improvement in the world is going to take place at the grassroots. That's where it's going to take place. But to maximize the success of the grassroots efforts and to make sure that it reaches global scale, we have to have centralized coordination, and we've got to have centralized support. We've got to create a structure that is going to maximize the success of the local efforts. What that takes to maximize the success will be different from one community to another, but we need somebody there who is working to say, how do I support those different needs of those different communities? Another point to this idea of let's get the narratives. We have to be a little careful what we mean by that. If we start saying, well, we want groups, we want to have different groups have narratives, we sometimes get to the point that people are saying, hey, we have to watch our narrative and our goals, and they're talking about their group. Whereas we've got to figure out a way that we get everybody talking about the world. So we have to say, if you get two groups and you're saying, okay, now everybody get in a room and we want to find the solutions to a problem. And if you've got two groups, each of which have different positions and different opinions of where they want to go, you may have a huge problem if each group is trying to represent their position. So the question is, how do we get the both of these groups to really be working towards collaborative consensus? That somebody mentioned that word earlier about the consensus. I think was His Excellency. But one of the things we've got this crazy idea that we've been starting to gel on what we call a Solomon approach. In other words, if you get two groups and you want to try to come up with a solution, one idea might be to say, okay, each of you flip a coin, and we're going to give one group, you have the job to come up with a solution that's going to be what everybody wants. And the other group gets to pick which of the two solutions is going to be the one used. So, just imagine here the problem between Palestine and Israel. You've got roughly the same populations on both sides. If either side wins, there'll be no peace, because the side that perceives that they lost are going to perceive that it was unfair to them, and they're going to continually look for ways to annoy, to disrupt, to do whatever to the other side. So the question is here, what if you could get the two groups and say, hey, okay, guys, the number one thing is peace. Everybody has to feel you did not get a worse deal than the other side. So, hey, two sides, flip a coin. One side, you divide all that territory into two parts where you would be able to live with either part, and then give the other side the choice to pick which one they want to have as their country, and then you've got a country, and it may not be as much as what you've got now, but the thing about it is at least nobody is trying to take away what you have then. So at any rate, the idea is we've got to find ways to promote collaborative consensus building. And with the comment about youth, there was a Model UN conference in Washington, D.C. in November. And many of you may be aware, I'm the representative to the UN for one of the largest Model UN conference groups in the world. So in the discussion there that, they have to come up and look at a topic. They know a topic and they know what committee they're on. And they have to say, what is the country I'm representing? What is their position? And they have to find out a way to get the position of their country into whatever the final resolution is. They want to make sure that the final resolution respects the interest of the country they're representing. And this is a difficult process. And one of the things that came out of that was, gee, could we use artificial intelligence to come up with some tools that will assist diplomats in being able to understand all the issues related to problems and being able to understand the positions of all the various stakeholders and all the different countries, and come up with recommendations for how to negotiate to come up with a collaborative consensus on how to best address the problems of the world. And that grew into the idea of a youth-led project to build such a tool set with artificial intelligence and recruiting professional diplomats from around the world to form an advisory panel to advise them, because this would not just be a tool then for Model UN delegates, but a tool that the diplomats, professional diplomats themselves could use to facilitate their arriving at collaborative consensus with their fellow colleagues from other countries that would best serve the world. And so this is a project that sort of combines a little bit this idea of finding ways to achieve unity on solutions, engaging youth, but also all the ages, engaging the professionals, not just an advisory panel from the diplomatic side, but also an advisory panel from the artificial intelligence technology side. So anyway, just wanted to add those comments. And Patrick, if you would give us some of your comments now on the main topics of mission, direction of the club, the principles, what we do, don't do, and how we can advance some of our initiatives.
I think, Francisco, you have your hands up. Please go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Patrick, and thank you everyone for letting me share my thoughts today. I know it's my first time here, and thank you, Gail, for bringing me on here too. I just want to share, Bill, I'm really on board with you. When you say consensus, it's really about everyone having the consensus. Now, here's where I would like to elaborate on that further. That's great. How do we do that? And I think I get your idea from flipping a coin, but that also cannot work at times. I'm actually going to go back to Israel and Palestine. Actually, I think 1947. Yeah, it was like 1947 when like the UN was first created. They actually created a plan where, and actually it wasn't called Palestine back then. It was just between the Arabs and Jews. And before like Israel became a nation, and they kind of in a way did that, and they each got a big part of the land. And what happened? It didn't work, and a war broke out. And that's kind of, so I think it's we have to be careful with that. I think it's more important to, I don't even fully, because I don't think anyone has, if everyone had the answer to this right now, this moment would be able to act this. I just wanted to say that, and also I just wanted Sigmani, I think we need to personally talk, because I liked your point about love, and a lot of people saying bringing people together, but I don't think a lot of people are really doing it, number one. And then number two, when we say love and bringing it, a lot of people are bringing it, but they don't really also have it in themselves. And I think it's about realizing it in ourselves. Once we realize it in ourselves, we can bring it to other people. So many people are doing this, bringing this message and bringing this mission, but deep inside, they don't really feeling they're stuck in their insecurities. And so that prevents everyone from coming together. So I just wanted to add, I really wanted to add before we move into next, what were you saying there too?
Thank you, Francesca. I want to just expand on a historical point there. In 1947, the problem that happened is the Arab community perceived the entire land as being their land and basically said, who are you, United Nations, to come in here and say you're going to take some of our land and give it to somebody else? Because at the time, if you go back to like 1900 and so, the population was 90+% was Arab, and so that was their perception. So they refused to participate in the UN conference to come up with a solution. So they were not at the table when the land was divided, and they rejected the concept of the division, and so therefore they went to war. They said, no, you're not going to take our land. They went to war. That's ancient history. We can't change that. There are many children who have been born in Israel that they didn't take anybody's land. They just happened to be born there. There's many children that have been born in the Palestinian side. We need to go and say, hey, you guys have to find a solution that works for all of you. If any one side says we're finding the solution that works for our side, and you ignore the interests of the other side, you don't have a solution. It's not going to happen. I once created a large multinational company, and I got the #1 company in each major European country to give me half the rights to their markets in their country. And people said, how can you do that? You were a little tiny company in the United States. How do you get these companies, the some of which had 100,000 employees, to go and say, we'll give you half the market? And what we did is we had a great idea. We had a great product that they would enable them to redefine themselves in their own marketplace. But the main thing we did is I made their benefit, the benefit of my partners, to be the #1 priority. In other words, I didn't go and say, okay, how do we create best for our company? We said, how do we make sure that we maximize the success of our partners? Because as long as I'm doing that, they're going to work very hard for our collective benefit. And that's what we need to be able to do when we look to bring consensus. We need to get all sides, as somebody else mentioned here already. We've got to find people that look at all the sides of the issues. I think maybe that was yourself when you're talking about on campus, that you've got groups that are only looking from their perspective. And so, one of the things that we see with many of the problems in the world where there's disagreement, people just don't talk to each other. There's nobody talking for common things. So one of the suggestions came from a group of young people, actually high school students. Could we create a debate competition where we take truly controversial issues and each team has to debate both sides of the issue? So they've got people on both sides of the issue, and we do a great competition with that. And the winners are the ones that where both sides of the debate were the best. So anyway, those are just a couple of comments on that. So back to you, Patrick.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it okay, Bill, if I can respond to one more thing? I just want to respond. Thank you. So Bill, thank you for sharing that. And I guess what I would say is, so I agree with you with building that consensus, and I think I didn't know that point with the Arabs, because they already had 90% from that perspective. Actually, I didn't really. So I'm really glad you shared that with me. And I think I agree. It's looking at everyone's perspective, and I think it's also looking at the Jewish perspective. It's looking at both, right? You have the Arab perspective, right, 90%, and then you also have the Jewish perspective there, which is like, we were there 2,000 years ago. We were kicked off, and we need a country because of all the anti-Semitism. So you need to find a way how both of those could mix together, and I guess they failed. And so I think we need to look at in every situation. I think that's what we see in the world these days. And so I just wanted to comment to that. And it's really about everyone seeing, it's really building that consensus. I just wanted to quickly mention that too. So thank you.
Patrick.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, everybody. I think when everyone was talking about the consensus and there are different directions, different people thinking their issue, their favorite pet issue is the main thing and so on. First thing is I think the word empathy comes into mind. That that needs to be one of the main theme of our communication is that we promote empathy as one of the root cause of the lack of empathy in the world. Civility, empathy. Uh, I love the word love. Unfortunately, I think the word love is very general and very vague. That's why empathy is a little bit more concrete. Civility and all that is also very nebulous. We talk about etiquette and so on. But those are the things that I'm thinking about now is that empathy, if everybody agrees, should be our main push in one of our communication theme. That's what I'm thinking. Along the way, how do we have a unified theory, like they say in physics? I think we need to have some kind of a metaphor so that it doesn't have to be a long passage of words and so on. People don't read anymore. But if we have some kind of metaphor that everybody would understand, this is where we're going. And the metaphor that I've just come up with is a tree or a wheel with cogs that we can. It's a good wheel with cogs that everybody can be a part of. That we're driving the same thing. So a tree or wheel is my metaphor at this point that I'm thinking that the dare to be great tree and everybody would understand, and we are at the root of the tree, and all the little leaves and all that branches, they are oh yes, the wheel, the Rotary Club. Well, okay, there we go. I don't even have to reinvent the wheel, pardon the pun. But the cog idea and the tree idea is the tree is there's a root. So dare to be great. We are the root. We do the stuff in the root. We don't deal with the stuff up on the branches. We leave all the scientists, engineers, and all that, and politicians to deal with the climate change and all that. But if we have a tree idea or cog of the wheel idea, they are part of the solution. We are all together. It's not like, well, we don't deal with this, we don't deal with that and that and that. Well, we don't deal with that because we don't have the resources. And we need to focus on root cause, like Bill was saying. So I think those are the kind of metaphor that maybe we can work towards in that regard. The second thing is we want to talk to different politicians and so on. We need to be, I think, maybe have a different phases of communication. I know we have the manifesto and so on. My worry would be, are we going to ruffle feathers prematurely? Now, eventually we're going to ruffle feathers. People don't like empathy. People don't like love and so on. But the less people we ruffle feather with at the beginning, the more benign we will seem. If we're going to go out and talk about we're going to eliminate fossil fuel as our fuel right now, right there and then, we're going to alienate a lot of the oil companies, I'm sure, and we will be the target of assassination, figuratively, I hope. So those are the kind of things we maybe need to have some kind of phase of our communication. So I think Gail and Jerica and Bill and all of us, we have work cut out for us in that regard. Bill was talking about causing something to happen, quote unquote. In different communities, they have different ways. The thing is, though, if there are disparate little cause of things and happen without central theme, like I was talking about, yeah, very little. Newspaper reporter may not want to write something like this, but if there's a like you said, there's a narrative, a unified narrative that is simple, then I think they will write about it. Hey, the thing that came into mind is flash mob, something that happened somewhere, and there's a good message on something like this, and then there's flash mob here and there. those are not very difficult to arrange. And there are organizations who are doing that for many different reasons. But we do it for the root cause. Then we have a very strong message that this is not the end of it. This is only the beginning of it. And so people can pay attention. That's the surprise element that maybe the Rotary Club has I checked the demographics, the average age is 54. And so if we have flash mob, I think some of them may not like it because it's too new and too radical. So I think those are kind of food for thought that I can think of at this stage. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to Bill.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Jerica. Thank you, Gail. And
Bill, I just wanted to say I'm going to be very quick. Something that Patrick said, and about that root. You know, with us being the root, Bill.
Mhm.
I think when you talked about seeds create the building of a tree. That's a true foundation. Okay? So if we are the seeds, you can't have empathy without love.
Mhm.
So if you take the seed of empathy and you take the seed of love and you take the seed of action and you take the seed of whatever other the manifesto that Bill has, you take those, that is the seed. So Bill, I'd like to leave this with you in the group for 10 seconds. Tyler Perry once stated that friends are like trees. The branches will, when you tell them something, the leaves, if they're friends of yours, they will fly away the moment things don't go well. If they're branches, you can only give them but so much because they will break. But if you have a tree root once in your life who will tell you the truth and always be honest with you, you have a real friend. So if we are the tree root in which you are building this upon, the tree, if the branches break off that tree, the tree root still is there and can still grow new branches. So the leaves are what are going to fulfill, but also live off those branches. Okay? So I just want people to understand when there's a tree root, this tree root will continue to stay as the club and as the manifestation of those seeds that grew that tree base. And they can always regrow branches, but you cannot always regrow a tree root. And I just want to leave it with that.
Thanks. I love all those analogies, but I think one of the things is we really maybe need to avoid a theoretic type of terminologies and discussions because a lot of the people that we want to communicate with are maybe not thinking so far. Sometimes, the best way to communicate with somebody is a 2x4 across the forehead. And so it's a little different for all people. But I think if I was to make an analogy, I would hope to see us maybe as the rain and the mulch. That we're helping to provide the nourishment for all the trees, not just for a single tree. I think perhaps
Bill,
yeah.
The reason why I'm interrupting on this, and the reason why I stated what I stated, is because trees communicate with everything.
Mhm.
Their roots don't extend to just one tree.
Right.
So trees have to grow with each other around the world. And that was my point. And the water, you talked about water and mulch.
Yeah.
Water and mulch. This is very light. It's not heavy. Water, trees, water, soil, all of that comes together. If you don't have, but you still have to have the seeds.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. I want to comment on another point that Patrick was making when he talked about the leaves, sort of the politicians and whatnot. We'll sort of leave it to them. And while to a certain degree here, we are looking to leave the implementation of a lot of the things we're talking about to the grassroots. We just want to make sure that they have the resources and the support and the knowledge to be successful, to maximize their success. I think at this stage, because we're 10 minutes away from the 2-hour mark, but I really appreciate here the comments of everybody today. But I would like to close with an example, because when I started, I talked about the need for people to see a compelling reason to act, and for them to see a viable path. We've talked about communications. I would like to give an example of the project that we are thinking of our key project, our start-off project, which, as I mentioned, was referred to by a Rotarian active at the UN as, he called it a gateway drug. But we don't want to use that terminology, but the same implication. It's something that people get engaged in that becomes so exciting to them that they want to keep going. They want to do more. So this is when we go and say, how do we engage the masses? We're looking for initiatives that people don't necessarily think a lot of, don't necessarily want to get involved in per se, but we get them involved. And through that involvement, they really get to develop a huge, huge sense of pride in what they accomplished with that involvement. They didn't think of anything. They're just doing what somebody locally told them to do. And the next thing they know, we've got an excuse to honor them for having done something great. And we can do that in a way that they're going and saying, oh, wow, I'm a hero. I want to do more stuff like this. I like being a hero. And that gives us the ability to move them on to the Future We Want series of initiatives, into the Dare to Be Great Challenge competition, where we challenge people in schools to see what teams can come up with the most outrageously audacious solution ideas to major world problems. And as I mentioned here, that we were doing pilots prior to COVID that resulted in the World Summit of Nobel Peace Prize winners inviting the winning team to go and host a workshop at their World Summit. So the idea, though, is, as opposed, some of you may know about the Hulk Prize, which offers $1 million to whatever school team can come up with great social entrepreneurship idea. Their goal is to come up with the best idea. Our goal in these various competitions is not to see who can come up with the best idea or the best solution. Our goal is to maximize the number of people who participate in searching for the best ideas and for working to develop those best ideas. That's a huge difference in goal. Because all those people who participate, if we can make sure that we go and honor the effort and get people to feel, wow, I came up with some good ideas. This is boosting confidence in people's willingness to get engaged in something because they feel I can contribute something. I've got something of value here. So I'm going to take Francesca very short, please, and then I'm going to describe this initial initiative that we're looking at doing this year, as not as the only one, but as our core most important initiative, and I'll explain why. Francesca.
Bill, before Francesco does that, could you just move on with what you're going to say? Francesco, are you okay with that? Because I really want to hear what you were going to say next, if that's okay with Francisco.
Sure. Yeah, no,
Okay.
no problem.
Okay. We have to pick, if we want people to get engaged, we have to pick something that is non-controversial. So you go out there and say, we're going to do something about climate change. I can tell you here, I can't lie. There are so many people I'm seeing here in the parliament of the country with the biggest Greens party, with the debate saying we have to get rid of all this Greens garbage here. There's no problem in the climate in the world and so forth. You're going to develop a huge resistance if you say we're going to do something about climate. You can say, oh, we're going to do something about war. Well, you can't do anything about war because no matter which side you go on, the other side is against you. You can't do anything about on politics and social projects. Let's help welfare. Let's do this and charity or whatnot, because no matter who, some people are going to be for and many people are going to be against. The one thing we find that there's a general consensus about that would be important is if we could raise the education level of all the children in the world. So this is the solution that we are looking at right now, is to find a way to dramatically reduce the number of children in the world who are not getting an education, starting with that 2 out of every 3 10-year-olds in the world that are unable to read effectively. Right now, the UN has a major problem that people are losing faith in the ability of the UN to make a difference in the world. All the major problems out there, they seem to only be able to talk about them, but not be able to make any kind of difference. If we can help the UN and the ministers of education and teachers and school administrators to be more successful in educating the masses of young people around the world, I don't see a lot of people that are going to stand up and say, no, I don't want our children to get an education, or no, we don't need our children to read. I'm not going to support a reading program for our children. I don't see people doing that. And I see the ability to go out there when we talk about influencing influencers, to go to all those people that are saying, hey, we are working to improve education outcomes in the world with all kinds of money. There are hundreds of millions of dollars being spent every year to increase education outcomes in the world. Mark Zuckerberg gave $100 million time in one check to Newark, New Jersey schools to improve the schools. Okay, this is 7, 8 years ago. Nobody can see any improvement. Nobody sees any difference. What can we do that would get people that are contributing to education programs? What can we do about people that want have a whole series of social improvements they'd like to see happen, one of which is education, that would like to be able to say, wow, look at this. We cut the number of children who can't read in the world in half to the lowest number it's ever been in history. That there are many people that would say, okay, wow, I want my name associated with that. I want to be part of that. I see here, if we get momentum going here, you've got 150 countries whose ministries of education are involved with the UNESCO projects related to literacy and education. I see if there was a major push, a major campaign that is supported by a lot of entities, I see almost every one of those. If the word goes out, okay, we need each of you to go and call for all the schools and teachers in your country to join this major literacy campaign, I don't see any of them saying, no, I'm not going to. If they start seeing their fellow ministries of education in the news being talked about because they've called on all their teachers to participate, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the others to do it. So what's the idea here? In 2019, we came up with an idea that for the 75th anniversary, because you got to find some event that you can attach any kind of a initiative to. The 2020 was the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, and the Secretary General was calling for major initiatives to better multilateralism, to get more people back engaged in trying to help deal with the problems in the world. And at the time, the thought came up. It was an initiative that was first mentioned by a group of 9 and 10-year-olds. They came up with the idea. And their idea was, well, we have a lot of classmates that are having trouble reading, and we hear about all these people in the world that have no money, so they have no food, and they can't go to school because they have to spend all day scrounging, begging for food just to live for another day. We want to do something that's going to improve the reading of our classmates, but also enabling more children in the world to be able to go to school, to have food, to be able to go to school. And their idea was a readathon. And this group of 8 and 9-year-olds gathered 70 classmates aged 6th grade to 10th grade to participate in a readathon, and went out in the community, and they got businesses and neighbors and others to pledge small donations for every hour they would read. And in 2 weeks, those 70 kids raised enough money that they were able to take 200 of the world's poorest children off the streets in Malawi, Africa, get them into school and feed them for a whole year. This was picked up by a bunch of 16-year-olds who then, while there was big hoopla, a lot of news reports, the congresswoman, a former UN ambassador, a CNN Hero of the Year award winner, all descended on this school and saying, wow, you kids are heroes. Look at what you've done. And then these 16-year-olds are going and saying, wow, imagine that 70 students were able to so dramatically change the lives, the futures of 200 of the world's poorest children. Imagine. And then I'm thinking they're going to say, oh, we could do that too. But that's not what they said. Imagine if we could get 70 million students to participate in a readathon like that. Imagine what we could change in the world. And they made a video, 3 girls, 16-year-old girls, made a video. And I'm not into Facebook or anything, but I put it on a Facebook page. Somehow 20,000 people found that Facebook page in a couple of weeks and watched that video. And young people from 40 countries contacted these girls saying, hey, this great, we want to be part of this. And so that grew this idea of a global readathon. And then we began to think, okay, how we had a group out of Austria and England and the Netherlands looking to say, we can use social media, we'll get schools involved. They went out and talked to a bunch of schools, and they said, and people said, yeah, let's do this. And they picked a date and everything, and they came and went, and nothing happened. When they went back, they said, the school said, but well, yeah, we love the idea, but we're not allowed to do anything unless the Ministry of Education gives us the okay. And so you got to get the ministries of education on board. And we realized it's not just a question of being able to go out to students. If we use social media and said, who wants to participate in a readathon, we might get a few million, maybe a few 10 million young people that will say, I'm going to participate in that. But they're not necessarily going to have the means to go out and get the donors to pledge to donations and set up all the administration and things like this. So we started looking to say, okay, what can we do that is going to maximize participation? And we realized here, what if we were able to get create a press event that would be so momentous that people in every community around the world would be talking about it. Did you hear about that? Oh, wow, this is going to happen. That's going to happen. Oh, they're going to raise money here. We're going to have money for education. And so just picture that community in Malawi or Nepal or elsewhere that they've never seen $10 in their school for anything to do with education any time. And somebody's coming along, and I'm just going to say, what if that press conference was an announcement by Bill Gates saying, hey, he's going to put up $1 for every hour a student reads anywhere in the world during a certain month called Read for a Better World Month. What's the likelihood that that's going to get talked about in schools and communities all around the world? A school with 100 kids in Nepal whose parents have almost no income is sitting there and saying, hey, if I read 20 hours, we can get $20. And if there's 100 of us that are getting $20, we got $2,000. In a school that's annual budget is maybe $1,000. So that's going to get people talking about it. And then we said, gee, if they don't talk about it that way, what if we could get all the local Lions and Rotary clubs to go and knock on the doors of all the schools saying, did you hear about this? Hey, here's this video, this press conference, this announcement. And we're here to help you that we can get a lot of people participating. Now, if you also have on top of that UNESCO and the UN and these 150 ministries of education joining and saying, hey, all the schools and teachers and students in our country, come on, let's show the world what great readers we are. And they're all calling for their students in their countries to participate. And what happens if the Association of Teachers, the International Association of Teachers, is calling on all the national associations of teachers to call on all their members? Hey, all of you pledge, let's do this thing. We're all looking for excuses to get our students to read more. Okay, here we've got the incentive in the students. So picture this. Picture we have the world leaders. Maybe it's the Secretary General, maybe not, but maybe it's the Secretary General announcing, we've got a literacy catastrophe in the world right now. 2 out of every 3 children can't read, and it's due to COVID. We've got a 30% increase in the number of children who can't read since the beginning of COVID. So we are calling for a campaign to get every educator to show their dedication to overcome the education losses due to COVID by participating in the largest ever organized human endeavor in history, by getting all of their students to participate in a global readathon during a particular month. And so he describes the need for that. And then he steps aside, and we have the head of the International Federation of Teachers Association stepped here and saying, hey, fellow teachers, this is what we've been waiting for. This is our opportunity to eradicate illiteracy in schools. So we got to all get behind this. Every one of you, we need all of you to pledge that you're going to support this. And then have the representatives of that group of 150 ministers of education getting up saying, hey, we're behind this. We're going to drive this to success. And then having the presidents of Rotary and Lions stand up and saying, we have 100,000 local locations around the world, and our local locations are all going to champion local support for this initiative. And then over the next few days, and then the Rotary Club's also mentioning that they will organize local pledge drives in every community around the world to pledge donations for every hour read by their local students. So local business supporting your own kids in your local community. And then the next couple of days, Bill Gates stands up and makes that announcement about, hey, great idea, and we pledge $1 for every hour read up to $10 billion. Okay, you can imagine the media is starting to go and saying, hey, this thing's got legs. You know, wow, every day we're getting new announcements. Here's another group supporting it. Here's another group supporting it. Then we go and track which countries have made that national push through their ministries of education on the one side and through their national associations of teachers on the other side through their local Rotary clubs to get the word out. So this is one example that we're just saying read. And we have a very simple app or way of collecting how many students or how many hours a particular class has read, so that we know, okay, how much of the pledge money is being raised by each one of these. But we have another little announcement that comes along after that shortly after maybe the Gates announcement, you have the Skoll Foundation come up and say, yeah, and you know what? If for those 10% of schools that have the highest average number of hours read per student, we will double the donations that school has raised. And if you're in the top 1% of schools, based on the average number of hours raised, we're going to triple the donation. So what that's doing is it's going and getting students to say to their classmates, can you read a little more? Can you let's go after this. Let's go. We can double our donations for this. Let's get out there and get that. So the idea is to get everybody local talking about it, getting all your Ministry of Education encouraging it, so no school can say, well, we couldn't do it because the Ministry of Education didn't give us permission. Getting all the Teachers Association pushing to have their members push for it, getting all the student organizations, all the youth organizations in Rotary, the Interactors, the Rotaractors, the Leos of Lions, all the religious organizations out there pushing for it. Getting organizations of celebrities, entertainment and sports celebrities going out there and making public service announcements saying, come on, guys, yeah, go for it, go for it. Can you imagine here that the participation rate would be pretty high? Okay, so we're talking communication. So this is why it's important if we can build alliances. Almost every major TV network, every major newspaper, they have an education editor that describes what's going on with education. And a lot of them support campaigns to improve reading and literacy, wherever they're located. So this is a great opportunity to get them on board as allies and saying, hey, you guys push out the word because maximize the participation. I left off one particular thing that happened in the meantime. And that is, this was 2019. We were looking to do this as part of the 75th anniversary, and along came COVID. Schools closed, students aren't in school, so how would you do this? You can't do it. So, and by the time they came back into schools, they had the Ukraine war taking everybody's attention. But we saw in 2022 at the General Assembly, we had the World Summit of Transforming Education. And they were focused on the problems with literacy. So one of the thoughts here is to expand this. This came with a discussion with the head of the major group for education academia at the United Nations, which is an association of all people interested in education. But they're interested in adult education, all education. But one of the ideas that came out of that is, let's just push for literacy across the board. And so the idea was, let's expand it to an international year for literacy, with the goal of getting every teacher in the world to pledge, primary and secondary, to pledge to get every one of their students to be an effective reader by the end of the year. Okay, so now this might be, now if we're targeting that the announcement is made during the General Assembly this year, it would be 2025. So that every teacher in the world to pledge to get every students to be an effective reader by the end of 2025. Because almost 50% of the kids who are in schools worldwide cannot read effectively right now. So this, if this is a very low ask, hey, pledge, just pledge. But once we get the pledge, now we can go and say, how are you doing? And the Rotary clubs and the Lions clubs and others can go and say, how do we help? And we add in the readathon during that year to put additional emphasis on things. And the money's raised by that. If we can raise $10 billion, if we could raise $2 billion, right now, it costs to feed a student in sub-Saharan Africa for a year. It's somewhere around $23 for a year. So if let's say we raise $230 million, just think of how many students does that mean that we would be able to get into school? We'd be able to get 10 million students into school like that. That's about a sixth of the total worldwide number of students that are out of school due to hunger and poverty.
Well, my apologies. Can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Thank you. So I think that the reading problem in the world will never be solved if we don't address the issue of culture, what we call cultural capital. And that is the different lived realities of different communities. If we are able, in the foundation phase, starting in ECD, to improve the self-concept, the self-image, the self-belief of children, if we can create role models that work for education, that shows people that education can make a difference in their lives. If we don't do the socio-emotional stuff,
no,
we're not going to impact on reading.
I tend to disagree if it's reading that we're talking about, because we actually have a member in India who has worked in the state of Uttar Pradesh in hundreds of schools that has demonstrated that they can take totally illiterate children and get them to read. Now, the question is, here is reading the answer to what we need in the world? No, but it's a step. And this initiative I'm describing, by the way, if you ask people, well, what's the benefit? Why are you doing this? That you would have a lot of people saying, well, if we get every young person in the world to be reading this amount of time, or we count the hours they put in learning to read, that's going to improve reading skills just by practice. And others are going to say, wow, but the real goal is the raising of the money to be able to get the kids who are not in school due to poverty, to be able to get them to go to be in school. But neither of those is our primary reason. Our primary reason was to demonstrate to a large number of young people that you can make a difference in the world. So it's almost like we could go out there and say, you know what, we're going to do an initiative. And the purpose of this initiative is we're going to get people doing this. for a week. Okay, it doesn't make any difference what we got them to do, as long as we got them to do something. Because our real goal is in the month that follows to have an International Honor the Readers Day. And the purpose of the International Honor the Readers Day is to be able to say to every student who participated, even unwillingly, they did it because their teacher said, you must, you have to, but they participated. And now, a month later, we can say, you know what? Due to your reading led to the raising of the money that so dramatically changed the lives of millions of the world's poorest children. You're a hero, and officially designate those people who participated to be global citizen heroes. And then to see if we have 500 million children, let's say, who participated, students who participated in the readathon, maybe the half of them will say, you know what, I'm ready to go on and support the next initiative. And we start moving over, transitioning into that Future We Want initiatives, where every school, middle school in the world has a team that's going and saying, how are we doing in our community relative to the SDGs, and how do we go on? So the issue is not to be right. I mean, for example, one of the things here we're not promoting at all are human rights. Not supporting at all human rights. We're not going out and saying we're supporting gender equality. But if we go and help and give a reason for a school to get everybody in the school to raise your reading scores, guess what? They're going to want the girls to improve their reading as well, because that's going to benefit their status as a school overall. It's like McDonald's. McDonald's wants you to buy a hamburger and fries, but some of their best campaigns, marketing campaigns, they go out there and say, come to McDonald's and you get a game piece for a Monopoly game for every hamburger you buy. And maybe that'll win you a free fries or a free hamburger. Or if you're really lucky and you can put 4 or 5 game pieces together, you might be able to win $1,000 or $10,000. And people come to McDonald's because they want game pieces, which they can only get if they buy a hamburger or fries. So we have to think strategically. Maybe the word is deviously, to say, how are we going to get people doing the things that we need them to do without them necessarily realizing that that's what they're doing until afterwards. Afterwards, when we give them credit, they're like those governors that wouldn't come forward to promote something good in their communities, but they were very happy to come and take the bows afterwards. So we need an excuse to be able to honor as many people as possible for doing something good, even though that was not their original intention. So this is an example of an initiative, but what we're really talking about here is the communications process that would make that possible. That communications, we have to get down into every local community. We have to get down so the grassroots is talking and they're excited about this announcement, this initiative. And because the politicians say there's excitement out there, I want to take advantage of that. So they attach themselves to this momentum that's going on. The teachers associations are saying, we've always been looking for excuses to get our students to read. Hey, if this works, if this is an excuse that gets them to read, let's go for this. But what we must be very careful is we don't do something that's, in the words of technology, called overloading functions. There are a lot of people who say, oh, great idea. Let's have them read about, let's designate what they should be reading about. As soon as we do that, what happens to the school that doesn't have books? We're saying, hey, students have to read. You know what? If there's a billboard out in front of the school and they're all practicing reading that should count. We're not going to go and say, well, you should read this or you should read that, because the goal was to get people able to read. And so we got to really think through how we get to the goal, and not how we try to solve all the world's problems with one step. If we can get everybody engaged and they're active and they're participating in this thing because they wanted to win that fries or that hamburger, or in this case, they wanted to win those donations or the status symbol that they're in the top 10% of highest average number of hours read in a school, or a country is trying to get to be able to say our country had a higher average number of hours read per student than your country, and get bragging rights out there. then this is sort of, I guess, the way we're thinking, but we got to figure out what is it going to take to get that communication to get all the way down to the community, and where we don't have the means to get it through the regular media because they're in a village that doesn't have any media coming there. What's the alternative ways? Whether social media, whether it's the local Rotary clubs knocking on the doors and handing out or telling people about it. The other thing is, how do we go and make sure that we create the incentives for those ministers of education, for those presidents and prime ministers? If a couple of presidents and prime ministers go on the air and start going and appealing to their populations to say, come on, we're going to do this. We're going to eradicate illiteracy in our country by the end of the year. You got to pledge. I need every teacher to pledge. And somebody is keeping a leader list of what percentage of teachers have pledged in what country or what city or what county. All of a sudden here, that puts pressure on people saying, we don't want to be last on the list. Come on, guys, we need more to sign up. So what I'm trying to do is I'm hoping you can imagine if this happens, that we would get a high degree of participation. If we got a high degree of participation and we are able to go and have ceremonies that instill tremendous pride by declaring these people to be heroes for what they've done, these students to be heroes, and getting that pride to them and their families and their communities, that this becomes the basis for follow-on initiatives that we can do, that now start to look into, well, how are we doing on clean water? How are we doing on sanitation and open defecation? How are we doing on providing having health care available? All these different things like this. So this is why this fellow Rotarian called this the gateway drug. This is the thing that sucks the people in, gets them to take a first step, and makes a difference. Now, if anybody's got a better idea on how we can go and reach hundreds of millions, not a few million, not 10 million, but hundreds of millions. And when we go into these competitions like the Future We Want competitions, and I'll just mention the song competition here, and then maybe Gail or Jerica want to pitch in afterwards on that. But the idea in the song competition is we go out to every music teacher and say, hey, here's an incentive. Get your students out there coming up and saying, hey, let's come up with some ideas, some song ideas for a song about the future we want. Here's some videos of skits that students have put together about the future they want. And so make a song about that. And we're going to pick the best song in the school, the one that the most students want, that are going to represent our school in the community level competition between schools. And the winner of the community level is going to go up to the next level. And each of these levels, we're not just going to go and have the students vote. They're going to be able to, we'll put it online, and we're going to invite everybody in the community to vote. So what happens now is that we've got all these parents, because all the kids are going to say, hey, mom, dad, uncle, aunt, you got to watch this. You got to vote for us, our school. And so whoever's watching that, they're hearing a dozen different songs about the future that they could have, the future that they want, and the ideas that the winning ideas in their community for how somebody could do something about getting their community to that level. And so we're spreading awareness, and we're spreading maybe concern, because maybe those songs say, if we don't do this, we're going down the tubes. And they're hearing it multiple levels, because they voted at the community level, then they voted at the county level, then they voted at the state level. And as it goes up the chain, all the way to the top. And we talked about whether the Grammys or the Eurovision Song Contest, which has more viewers than the Olympics gets, that this is an opportunity for everybody who loves the arts and loves music to attach themselves to this this event that is going to get a lot of people doing things about music that they might not otherwise do. So I don't know, Gail, do you want to maybe?
Yeah, I do want to say, this is, and I know it is for Jerica as well. Maybe we can both speak together. I don't know. You know, one thing, Bill, I don't want to go before Francisco, because I did ask him to wait till you finish.
Yeah.
Francisco, if you could be really quick so that Jarek and I could speak, it would be great.
Yeah, no, of course. I just want to say this last thing, Bill. With everything you said, I think a lot of it was very on point. And actually, when I was in high school, I think it was like I remember I was on a Rotary meeting like a very long time ago, and I was invited to join, and I'm totally into a lot what you're saying. If you would allow me, I would be very interested in joining the Rotary Club. This, and also I heard there's an AI group too. So that would be really amazing to do. But I just want to end with that, and thank you again for having me on. This is really great to be on.
Mhm. Thank you for those comments. So,
Yeah.
Gail,
Yeah, so it's funny because this week I had, the Grammys is this weekend. I'm expected to go. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I'm expected to go. And while it's exciting, I just want to if you give me 2 minutes, this is really important to say. I'm an artist myself, okay? But I've been blessed enough I have parents that were grounding, and blessed enough to also have had the grounding of people like Barry White, Gladys Knight, Matthew Knowles, Beyonce Knowles' dad, and all the way to a lot of executives. Ahmet Erdogan was I think almost 100 or over 100 years old before he died, and he was the head of Atlantic Records for many years. And he was, and Quincy Jones, and I say this, not that they're my best friends. Barry White was, and Gladys Knight are, but those others I've named, they were not my best friends, but they mentored me for years. And so there's a groundedness, and a lot of artists, I had an artist approach me this week. Oh, can you help me to get into the UN, because I have something I want to talk about, and I want to really get out there and this and that. And what we have to remember when we're engaging with artists is that they're into their music and they're into their art, and a lot are grounded, but some are not that grounded. So when we're looking at engaging celebrities, they are just what that is, celebrity of it. But there are organizations like the Grammys. So this week I had to be in touch with the head of the Grammys. And I had actually talked with him about some of what Bill wanted to do. I've been talking with him for a while, but some of what Bill wanted to do. And when you look at it from that perspective, again, head of the Grammys or the head of this or head of that, they do influence something. Okay, there's an influence there of what they can influence inside of what we're talking about. Sometimes we look at the celebrity, but the celebrity belongs to something. And I would like to say, as part of the communications for that, one of the things we do definitely want to look at is, if it's Rotary, Bill often talks to the head of the Rotary to get behind what he's doing here in Rotary. Okay. So when we're looking at celebrities and producers and things like that, you want to look at people who are grounded. And even if they're not the head of something, they belong to something much bigger. So if we look at, like, let's say a Beyonce could take the reading very seriously and really put it out to all of her followers. Okay. If we looked at a Kim Kardashian, she can also do the same, as well as she has children, and she could learn something from this. Okay. So when we look at people like that, they have incredible influence. But when we also look at the groups like the Grammys, or we look at the groups of, like, I'm also part of Women in Grammys. I've talked to the head of that whole international thing about what Bill is doing here as well. When we look at all of these things, we want to look at who is grounded, whose work will get it out there into, like Bill said, doesn't matter what you're reading, but it's the core of what you're reading. And there's that little bit of deception there, of we get people to doing what they don't even realize they're doing. These are some of the people that can have the influence. And when it comes to the song contest, that really lights up my soul, because everyone loves music. Everyone loves storytelling. Everyone loves film. And these kinds of things will get youth not only activated in the song, but you learning to read too inside of that. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but it does make it palatable for anyone to take that kind of initiative on. But I do think that before we even get to that point, it's important that we start with the granular ways that Bill is talking about. And I'm not just saying that because Bill said it. I'm saying that because I'm in 100% agreement that these granular ways, it's a step by step, but they're big steps. They're huge steps that people can easily take on as bite-sized morsels. You know, and I know you don't like the analogy, Bill, but I'm going to give this anyway. If you eat a whole cookie, you're going to get stuck in your throat, okay? But we all often take a bite of a cookie at a time, but we eat that cookie up within 5 minutes, right? Or 10 minutes. So we can eat this readathon up within bite-sized morsels where the whole cookie is consumed. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerica, do you want to add anything here?
Yes, thanks, Phil, and thank you, Gail. I believe that arts, in a large way, affects the mindsets of our culture and what we feel, and what we feel is possible for ourselves. And it's something that I'd like us to, yes, focus on with the communications department. But I'll tell a really quick story. I come from Toledo School for the Arts. It's where I graduated high school. And when our founder, Marty Porter, went to the Board of Education to start this school, most of our high schools had been flipped into trade schools, and he wanted a better way to affect a broad community of students. I come from Toledo, Ohio, so we had students from the rural area. We had students from more, say, the rough side of town. We had students from really affluent areas, and they brought us all together in this great melting pot of artists. And when we started the school, we were in the basement of our old Bell telephone building. Our classrooms were separated by tarps, and we were sharing books, if you can imagine. We had students there who were sophomores that could barely read. So we had a huge challenge with our educators and teachers to bring everyone up to speed. And we took that on as students because we loved being there and we loved what our school was all about, and we really wanted to make it better. And so with our performances, I'm a bass player, a conductor, a singer, and dancer. We all went out and performed. We got money from Owens Corning, Huntington Bank. We did their holiday performances, you name it. But on the other side of it, we all came together to kind of push our students that weren't achieving, because we really wanted to be verified by the school board so we wouldn't lose our school. So I say that in the light. We raised $3.5 million over the course of 3.5 years. We continued to grow in that building, and we bought 3 floors and completely fitted it out with art studios and classrooms. And we were able to raise enough money to get us into the Ford building, which gave us larger classrooms, larger art studios. But the motivation with young people when they believe something can happen, that's where we're going to, find the masses, especially in culture, that varies in age. It's not just the youth, it's older people too. But we can really utilize this as a tool on a higher level of communications for us to achieve our goals, and for other people all around the world to believe that they can achieve these larger global goals from right where they are. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Gail and Jerica. I just want to point out.
Bill, I'm sorry, it'll be very quick. Jerica, if you would come in and chime in, if you wouldn't mind too. I just want to say this last part. Much like Jerica, similar background, violinist and things like that. And the one thing that I wanted to share is that music is the implementation of both soul and communication. And when I say soul, I mean that often music is the one thing that translates, if you listen to classical music, all the way into whether you listen to rap or whether you listen to R&B, pop, or whatever your genre of listening is. I think Jarek and I can both say we float across all of them. But the one thing music also offers is an answer to a particular solution, okay? And the arts itself can propel other things as a foundation. It can propel where you're going, what you're looking for. Often when we come home from a hard day, we listen to music, or we watch an uplifting film, or we want to say we just want to be with our family and watch TV or something like that. With that said, it can be the ethos, the literal ethos, to youth having something of a commonality across all cultures. It can be a way for youth to also speak to one another through that ecosystem and engage each other. And so it could be the conduit, Bill, so to speak, for this reading thon. So they can read anything, right? They can do whatever they want in reading anything, okay? That music, it could even be the piece that goes out about this. I'm talking about when the song contest comes, could even be a small something that someone sings so off key and so bad that it could be the cost, the amplification for music teachers or anyone else to begin to amplify the song contest. That's one thing. The other thing is the reading. You often hear there's an old thing that used to be on that said reading is fundamental. Okay, reading is fundamental. I remember I used to hear that as a kid. Bill, you told me something about reading off of a box. I remember you saying that the other one time. I said, well, what would a readathon look like? You said it would be like reading off of a box, right? This idea just came up to me as Jerica was speaking. What if the readathon started out with, you said they could read anything. They sang what they read.
I think here, this back to my comment about overload, that we really don't, we just want to say read, and the teachers will evaluate that. I think the less we describe what counts and what doesn't count, the more participation we're likely to have. And I'd like to add one thing, Gail, because you and Jerica both pointed out the artistic point of view, but I just want to say from a club perspective, it's not about the music. It's not about the arts, because we're looking at a similar competition here for.
No, we're not saying it's about the arts or the music, Bill. We were just saying as a complement to what you are talking about.
Yeah.
No, not at all. What we are saying is that no, not even overload. It could be something as stupid as, oh no, you can do whatever you want, read whatever you want. You could even sing off tone. You can do whatever you want to read.
No, absolutely, because it's, in the end of the day, it's like America's Got Talent. They're going before the general public, and people are voting. I like this song or I like that song, and in some cases, it's going to be whoever's got the most friends is going to get the most votes, because they're voting for their friends, sort of like the Dancing with the Stars, where you sort of wonder sometimes how some of the worst dancers end up winning. But the main thing for us, it's like the readathon. It's about how many people, or like the Dare to Be Great competition. It's about how many people do we get to try? How many people do we get to engage? So, and I think the lesson out of this is, let's go and look here, because we're trying to get allies for all the stuff we do. So I said here, for teachers that are trying to get their students to read, any kind of a campaign that comes along that encourages reading is serving that teacher's goals to get their students excited about reading. So if I'm a music teacher, I'm looking for any excuse I can find to increase the excitement level among.
The recording has stopped.
Who's going to attract someone on the same level?
So I think we've lost Bill for some reason.
Bill, yeah.
So I think, if we could sum up what Bill was stating and, support him in this way so that we're not all over the place. I think that what Bill and Jerica, Patrick are all saying, there is a manifesto in place. And often in our club meetings, we go completely off track, or we get into the little of what we're doing. If you all have, everyone here, there's no one here that does not have something that they want to contribute from the work that they do themselves. Find a commonality of the work that you do yourself and that you want to put out into the world, and connect it with the manifesto of what Bill is creating here, okay? So that what we are doing in terms of as a communications team based on the vision of the club, okay? Everyone is taken care of, their contributions are connected with the overall goal of the club, which is why you all join the club. You join to meet people of like-mindedness or even connect with one another. But let's do that because I know everyone has a lot of things to do. And if there's any thoughts that anyone has, they can directly WhatsApp message Bill. And you know what, Lloyd? I was going to say let's have more communication, but I think without Bill being here, I think let's just stop it here so that if there's anything that needs to be communicated, let's leave it there and just continue and then communicate it directly with Bill. I think that's what he would rather. So let's do that. Lloyd, I think if there's anything you would rather say, or even Andrew, let's
No,
yeah,
talk to you later. Thank you.
yeah, let's give it all over to, not that I'm not shutting anyone down, let's just give it over to Bill so that he can move it where he wants it to go. It's not about him, but he has some specific thoughts. And so, Lloyd, if you would table that and just share it with Bill, I would really appreciate that.
Okay,
Yep,
I just
and
wanted to say a couple of things because I
Lloyd,
will
forgive me.
forget if I don't say it now.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay.
Just my brain. I forget things. So in terms of what you just said, Gail, around reading the like what I'm thinking around how to engage corporations, for instance, who are members of UN Global Compact, as an example, in this to promote this whole thing for us. How about asking them or asking the participants to just read the labels on all these products? That could be one way to get those